G'day and welcome to the channel. My name's Darren, but you can call me Daz. Welcome to DownunderDaz. So, I normally make YouTube videos on subjects such as travel and car repairs, even some cooking and just general things like that. But I've decided to start making some new videos and do a series on what it's really like to live in Australia. And I'm doing this because of several reasons. Firstly, a lot of people overseas say to me, what's it really like to live in Australia? And they ask me this question as if no one's ever told the truth or the real truth about just what Australia is really like. So another thing was that I found out that during the pandemic in 2020, 490,000 Americans researched moving to the Gold Coast in Australia. Now, I live on the Gold Coast. This is my city and where I live, and we have a population of just over 600,000 people. For 490,000 Americans to research moving to the Gold Coast, in like I think it was like a 3-month period in 2020. I found this quite interesting, and I found that there was a lot of people who Australia was starting to appear on their map, and they were sort of thinking, well, I wonder what life in Australia would be like. What's it like to visit Australia? Is this something we can do? Can we achieve this? So I've watched, must be hundreds of videos on, about Australia, and everyone has done videos on how to do a Tim Tam slam, which is delicious, of course, and people's reactions to trying Vegemite on hot buttered toast and that. These things are all great, right? Nothing wrong with that, but it's been done to death, and the thing is, it doesn't really tell you anything about Australia. A lot of people, I believe, would want to know things like what's it like living in Australia? How much money do people earn? How much does a loaf of bread cost? If I go to McDonald's and I buy a Big Mac, how much is that going to cost? Are the hospitals and your healthcare, is it really free? Is Australia the most expensive country in the world? And if it is, how do we afford to pay for it? And do we have any money left over? These and many other questions I hope to answer. I'm going to preempt your questions until some people start asking me questions in the comments down below. But and I plan to do multiple videos on this subject. So this is the first video I'm doing, which is called So What is Australia Really Like? But I'll be doing other videos because I could go on talking for hours, and I often do. But I'll be dividing them up into shorter videos, and you're welcome to ask me questions and I'll happily answer them, and I'll be honest and completely upfront. I'm not going to be hiding anything from you. I'm not going to try and gloss things over. I'm not going to make bad things sound good. I'm not going to make good things sound bad. I'm going to tell you exactly as it is, because that's what Australians do. We like to be upfront, we like to be honest and open, and we're quite happy to tell you things. So hit me up with some questions. I'll answer them in the next videos that I'm going to do. And I'll be covering all sorts of subjects like different cities of Australia, different states. I've been to every state of Australia except for Tasmania, and I'm hoping to go this year or next year. I've been to every other state. I've been to every capital city of Australia except for Hobart in Tasmania. And I've lived in 3 states and travelled around a fair bit. I'm not really the one for... I do fly, but I often drive to places like Sydney and Melbourne and Cairns. And I love road trips because I believe sometimes the journey is just as good, if not better, than the destination. And it's amazing what you can see on the way. So I'd really like to tell people who are interested about Australia what it's really like. All the good things, all the bad things, warts and all. I'll tell you the whole the whole lot as I see it. So anyway, to start off, just a little bit about me, so you know where we're starting off from. So my family emigrated to Australia from, we were living in London at the time. My family were from the Midlands in England, but has spent the last few years living in London in the late 1960s. Around about 1970, things started getting a bit hard in the UK. My dad was paying a lot of tax for the amount of men that he employed in the construction business. And it was just getting harder and harder to survive. Accommodation was very hard to find. It wasn't unusual for 4 or 5 families to share one house. And my mum, who had done a bit of travelling in her lifetime, her father was in the British Army, so Mum had lived in many places, including Mauritius in the Indian Ocean. She'd been to Cape Town in South Africa. She'd been to the Canary Islands, Kenya, Egypt, Malta, all over pretty much all over the world. And Mum had a good sense of adventure, and she said to my dad, who'd never been anywhere, "Why don't we just emigrate to Australia?" And it took a while. I think it took about 10 or 12 months to process, and we moved to Australia in November of 1971. So I came to Australia as a 3.5-year-old kid. Some of you might pick up a little bit of an English accent, or some people say you sound like an Aussie, but maybe slightly posh, or slightly, there's some sort of twang in there that's not 100% Australian. But I've only ever known Australia. Australia's my country. I can't really remember the UK at all, although I do remember the flight from England to Australia back in 1971. I do remember that flight, but I don't remember life in England before that. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm pretty much a dinky-die Australian. I've been here now for, 52 years almost, and so I think the locals will accept me as an Aussie now, and not ashamed to say it, but I've turned out a bit of a bogan as well. So I'll be explaining some of that to you along the way. Now, Australia has been really good to my family. There's been good times and hard times. There's been some loss of family members due to age and illness and things like that. It's been a very interesting path living here in Australia, but none of us have ever regretted it. No one had ever came to Australia. My brothers, my sisters, my parents, none of us have ever regretted coming here. And we've also sponsored other members of our family to come here, and I'm pretty sure that they have no regrets coming here either. So for us, it's been the best thing that we could have done and have done. But I think to a lot of people, they think that coming to Australia, it's so far away, it's so expensive, it's so out of reach for a lot of people. I think that's more a misconception than a truth. Because Aussies are big travellers. We travel all around the world. I've been to something like 23 countries or something like that. Travelling is not that expensive, and I can show you how to do that as well. I'll explain how we travel around the world and do different things for not a lot of money. Sometimes it costs us more money to stay home in Australia than it does to go and have a holiday in Asia for a few weeks. And so anyway, basically what I'm saying is, if you've been considering coming to Australia, whether it be just, as a backpacker, or if you are considering emigrating, or just coming for a holiday, or you want to come here as a worker or a student, hopefully I'll be able to answer a lot of questions which I think other people may have touched on, but only lightly. I hope to explain these things to you in a lot more detail, and also give you a lot of information you've never heard before. Now, I'm going to start off just by telling you my general impression of Australia, and I'm coming from a point of when I go overseas and come back to Australia, how I perceive Australia with a fresh set of eyes when I just get back here. So straight off the bat, my wife's from the Philippines, and we've been together almost 30 years, and we've been married, it'll be 27 years next month in June. And so we quite often go over to the Philippines, and we've got a house over there. So when we go there, we often stay for, it could be 4 or 5 weeks. And before COVID came along, we used to visit regularly. And I haven't been back to the Philippines since 2019, just before COVID. We were there in November 2019. Hoping to go again this year or next year, and having a reasonably long stay, at least a month or more. But when I do that and I come back to Australia, and when I go overseas, I often visit other countries. So I've taken in countries like Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam, Hong Kong, Indonesia. I take in other destinations while I'm overseas, because when you're overseas, it's not expensive to visit another country. So I see lots of other cultures and that, and when I come back to Australia, I'm looking at it with renewed enthusiasm and new open eyes, and I can look at it, with a fresh eyes and see Australia not as a person that just lives here continuously, but a person that's gone away and come back, because a lot of things will become apparent to you when you first arrived in Australia, and if you live here, we either take them for granted or don't even recognise that something about our culture is unique. And there's a lot of things that when you get back to Australia, you just really appreciate. Now, not putting any other country down, I love travelling. I love every country I've ever been to. I haven't been anywhere that I regretted. I haven't been anywhere that I didn't love the food, the people, and the experience. It's all been great. But there's something very special about coming back home to Australia. So one of the first things I noticed when I arrived back in Australia, and sometimes I arrive back in the Gold Coast or back into Brisbane, or I might arrive into Sydney or even Melbourne is my first step off the plane into Australia. One of the first things you will notice is just how clean it is. Now, Australia's a very clean country, and not just in parts, but I mean pretty much, you could almost say 100% blanket coverage, Australia is a clean place to visit. You're not going to find a lot of litter. Australians really hate littering. If you're walking down the street and an Australian sees someone get a lolly wrapper, a sweet wrapper, and chuck it on the ground, we would assume that was a mistake, that they must have dropped it by accident, because no one in their right mind is going to chuck litter on the ground. We just don't do that. And if you were to walk away from that wrapper, you would be almost beset upon people who would pick it up and hand it back to you, or they would at least pick it up and put it in the bin themselves, because we will not tolerate litter on the ground. We just don't do that. It's instilled in us from the time we're kids. On our food wrappers, it says dispose of me properly, don't litter Australia, things like that. We have TV campaigns for that. And now it's just the done thing that you don't litter. If you see a bit of rubbish on the side of the road or something like that, it's probably blown off the back of a truck, or the wind has blown it there from a garbage bin or something like that, because I would say 99.5% of Australians would not consider chucking litter on the ground. We just don't do that. And if anyone comes to Australia, please don't do that, because the fines are heavy. You will get confronted by people who we will not put up with that, Even though Australians are really friendly, outgoing, and, pretty much helpful people, we wouldn't accept anyone intentionally littering. So Australia's a lovely clean country is one of the things you'll notice. Another thing you'll notice is how fresh the air is. And it's not a place that's full of smog and pollution, and if you can smell a fire burning, it's not someone burning rubbish, it's a bushfire somewhere off in the distance or something like that, because Australians just don't really set fire to things. We don't do that in Australia. You're not likely to see all this petrochemical smog that big cities get. You can get just like natural fog from cold and moisture. That's, you'll get that in some cities. And not even that often, to be honest. But you'll notice that the air is very fresh and natural, Now, another thing that you might be surprised is just how green Australia is. Now, I've got relatives in the UK, and having conversations with them, it seems to me that they believe that Australia is some burnt up, dried, red soil, red dust place that's very inhospitable and unlivable, basically. Now, there are parts of Australia like that, but 90% of Australians will never see them. They're out there, but they're so far away, so far off the beaten track that Australians just, for the most part, don't go there. I mean, a lot of Australians have four-wheel drives and go four-wheel driving, and they enjoy to go to places like that. But it's not something that the average Australian sees regularly. I've seen it a couple of times, sort of heading towards the outback. And it's probably, I mean, if you were dumped out in the middle of nowhere, yeah, it's going to be pretty serious. But this is not something that affects the average Australian. For the most part, you're going to find that all around our coastline is a beautiful green belt that's lush, fertile, volcanic. Anything grows, in Australia you can grow anything from like apples, which like a cold climate, through to bananas, pineapple, sugarcane. We pretty much grow everything. Anything you could grow in Europe or America or South America or the Middle East or the Mediterranean, it's going to grow here in Australia. We do have less rainfall than other countries, but it doesn't mean it's this dried, burnt up place. Australia has, we have to be careful with our water supplies, and we do have droughts and things like that. But for the most part, you're not going to really be affected by that. There's going to be beautiful, fresh, clean drinking water. Our dams, we have a lot of dams, and the reserves on those dams are usually quite high. I think our local dam is like 99% full at the moment. The Brisbane dams are very high. And yes, there are droughts, and some of the droughts in Australia can last 10 or 11 years. I have met kids in Australia who were 8, 9, 10 years old, and they had never seen it rain. But these aren't kids along the coastline. These are kids out on, like country farms, cattle stations, inland, away from the coast. So most Australians live around the coastline of Australia, where it's lush, fertile, and the weather is more mild, and it's just a very comfortable way of life, and plenty of fresh, clean drinking water, and you can grow beautiful crops. The fruit and vegetables are world class, and Australia produces far more fruit and vegetables that we can consume, and we export a lot of stuff overseas. And we're pretty much self-sufficient for most things. So, yeah, those three things there, how clean Australia is, the beautiful clean air, and how green Australia is. Now, talking about the cleanliness of Australia, I wouldn't say graffiti is dirty. But it can make a place look dirty. If there's a lot of graffiti somewhere, it can make a place look run down, unsafe even, and it just detracts from areas. You'll find in Australia we don't have as much graffiti as other countries. But having said that, there is graffiti here, and Australian graffiti is of a high standard, if you can call it that. Some of our graffiti is very artistic, beautifully done. You wouldn't even see it as, someone destroying someone's property. These murals and that the graffiti artists do in Australia are of a very high standard, and people actually enjoy them, go out of their way to visit the graffiti and have photographs taken. And so graffiti in Australia, it's not people coming up and tagging your car and wrecking your front wall. Yes, that can happen in some areas, but it's nowhere near as much of a problem in Australia as it is in other countries I've seen, where the graffiti over there just seems like vandalism and defacing government and private property. So that's something that's not a bigger problem in Australia as it is in other countries. So anyway, I'm going to be putting up here to the top of the screen here some images and videos that I've gathered in the last week or so. and each time I do one of these videos, I'll be showing you things that I've seen in the last week or so that I found interesting and maybe you'd like to see, and I'll share it with you. So I'm going to be putting up some videos of my wife works for a hotel. She works for an international hotel chain, and she quite often has a lot of wildlife appearing around the hotel. She sees kangaroos, bearded dragon lizards, and she sees all sorts of parrots, you know, lorikeets, rosellas, cockatoos, galahs, corellas and major Mitchell cockatoos and things like that. And also she gets snakes. And I'm going to have to touch on this subject because I know this is one thing that's on a lot of people's minds when they think about coming to Australia. Am I going to be killed by some venomous snake or spider? You know, is the blue-ringed octopus going to get me? You know, am I going to be trampled to death by a camel or taken by a crocodile? Well, the fact is, chances of that happening is very, very, very small. And after 51 years, 52 years in Australia, I think I've only seen, let me think, well, it'll be less than 10 snakes. Probably, I think I've probably only seen about 6 or 7 live snakes, wild. So, like, that's about, what, 1 every 7 years, something like that. Now, although I haven't seen many wild snakes, I'm pretty sure a few wild snakes have seen me, and I haven't seen them, but generally they will just literally hightail it and go in the other direction. So snakes are not out to hunt you down and kill you. If you start coming towards them, they're on the ground usually, they can hear you coming, they will just turn around and beat it because they can't eat you, you're of no use to them, they're just going to turn around and go. And so the chance of you ending up like stepping on a snake or cornering a snake, yep, it can happen, but it's usually quite rare. They will just get up and go if they sense you coming. Now, something we do in Australia every day, before we put our shoes on, we get our 2 pairs of shoes and we bang them together like that. And there's a habit that all Australians have got, and people ask me, why do you do that, you know? And I'll take my shoes off now and I'll show exactly what we do. So in the morning I pick up my pair of shoes and I do that. Keep your hands away from the holes and have a quick look in case anything comes running out of your shoe. If a shoe's been in my garage or a shed or something for more than a couple of days, I will put my hand up inside. Because if you're going to get bitten by something, it's better to be bitten on the tip of your finger than to put your foot in and have something in there. So we put our hands in there and just have a quick feel. Now, overnight or even during the day, it is possible for you to get in your shoes spiders, small snakes, a mouse or a rat. I had a massive centipede in one of my shoes once. I mean, it was like that, and it was really, you wouldn't want to be bitten by that. It was quite a big one. Another thing here in Queensland especially, we get cane toads. Now, cane toads love to jump in your shoe. They like to hide but in anything that's dark. I've had a couple of huntsman spiders get in my shoes, and huntsmans are harmless. What we're really hoping that we're not going to find is a funnel web spider, because if a funnel web spider gets in your shoe and you put your foot in there, you are going to feel 2 fangs very quickly, and it's going to be a matter of life and death for you to get to the hospital in time. Also, small snakes can get inside your shoes, baby snakes, and you don't want to be bitten by one of them either, because small snakes can be just as venomous or more venomous than the parents. The parents have often learned not to inject a large amount of venom into you, where younger snakes, smaller snakes will often inject a lot of venom into you, and you're more likely to die from a small snake bite than maybe a mature snake that might bite you and not inject any venom at all. So I know these are scary, horrible things, but what is the chance of this happening to you? Well, very, very slim. I'm trying to think of family members. I don't know anyone in my family. I think I've probably got 20 members of my family. Don't know anyone that's ever been bitten by a snake. And my family members have been here for 30 to 50 years. None of us have been bitten by a snake. None of us, have had anything major happen to us. I remember when I was about 10 years old that I was stung by a blue bottle jellyfish. Now, a blue bottle jellyfish looks like a little tiny bit of plastic and has like a blue streamer hanging off it. And when I was 10 years old, I was swimming in Byron Bay, and I saw a few dead blue bottles on the beach, didn't see any in the water, and then all of a sudden I felt something touch the inside of my leg, and